Please have a seat in the hall. We are ready to continue the program. And our next speaker, Mr. Giles Robinson, comes from UK, and he's going to continue the talks with the theme of collaboration. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. You can hear that okay? Good. I've got the PowerPoint up. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank Graphic Concrete for inviting me here today to talk about a project. My name, I'm Giles Robinson, and I'm from Foster & Partners. We are a large 1,500-person strong multidisciplinary architecture and engineering firm. We work on projects all around the globe, and we work from the scale of large bridges and infrastructure projects down to individual products and door handles. So we really see the kind of the complete range and scope of projects. I'm here today to talk about Fortaleza Hall and Commons, which is for us a very modest project. But in fact, it was indeed a challenging one, not least for the context in which we were working, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I think also really to respond to the story that I'll tell about the building and its genesis. And that genesis really was this particular gentleman, which is Herbert Johnson. He's the third generation owner of SC Johnson, a large Midwest manufacturing company. Nothing very exciting. It was cleaning products where they started, but they became very famous for Johnson wax, which was used extensively for floor cleaning throughout the US and indeed across the world. And Herbert Johnson, something of a pioneer, he understood that the success of his company would be really based upon understanding the raw products that he used for the wax, and that was the oil from a canuba tree that grew in Brazil. And he understood very early on in his career as the CEO of the company that ensuring the sustainability of that source was critical. So in the spirit of the age, he decided to take a journey from Racine, Wisconsin, where they were based, all the way down across America, through the Caribbean, down to Fortaleza Hall. That was in 1935. And principally to understand and learn more about this particular tree and its wax. Importantly, to look at building community facilities in the forest to ensure that the people who are harvesting and growing the canuba palms were well looked after and maintained. And on that journey, there was a series of photographic images taken, and indeed there were some etchings produced of the canuba rainforests, which were very, very distinctive, and they did really give a clue to a particular element of the project that I'm here to talk about today. And that canuba, the canuba trees, very distinctive leaf and tree form, and very evocative, really, of the experience that we were trying to create in our building that I'll be talking about shortly. Herbert Johnson, he was a pioneer in terms of understanding his business, and he was a pioneer of architecture and a patron of architecture. And you'll all be familiar with, I hope, this complex of buildings, the SC Johnson headquarters in Racine. On the right-hand side, the great workroom built between 1936 and 39, and later post-war, 44 to 49, the research tower. And those two projects were built very much with Herbert Johnson at the helm of the company, and he employed arguably America's greatest architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, to develop the designs. And Frank Lloyd Wright was a true pioneer in his day, and I always very much enjoy this photograph. This is Frank Lloyd Wright with Herbert Johnson, the building inspectors, where he was demonstrating that his design was capable of taking not only the code requirements, which is 12 tons on top of the column, but he added an extra 38 tons to show just how clever and good his design was. And it was at that point the base of the famous column collapsed. But that building was an important component in the project. I think probably one of his seminal buildings, and probably one of the seminal buildings of the 20th century. Very close to his death, Herbert Johnson suggested to his son that he should make the same journey that he had made, and he should go down to Fortaleza to look at the facilities that he had built there, and to understand more about the community and the tree. And Sam took him up on that offer, and he initially went and tried to locate the Sikorsky S-38 seaplane, which there was only 200 made. The one that his father had flown to Fortaleza had been lost. The others had all been decommissioned. And rather remarkably, during the design phase of the project in 2007, they did actually uncover off the coast of Indonesia the wreckage of the original Canuba seaplane. And we did at one point look at trying to bring that back to the surface and introduce it into the project, but that was a step too far, certainly for the project I'm talking about today. But undeterred, Sam Johnson elected to go back, and he uncovered the original archive drawings for the seaplane in question. And he then went about from 1995 to 1998, creating an exact facsimile and replica of the plane, which is shown in the photograph here, the Canuba 2 effectively, together with original wicker seats in the cockpit. And Sam Johnson, together with Fisk and Kurt, his two sons, made that journey, and it was beautifully captured in a film made, Canuba Memories of my son, and there's a little bit of footage here just to look at. And the film is worth watching. I mean, it's a fabulous bit of cinematography, going from the reconstruction of the plane, flying through the Midwest, down through the clouds, and ultimately terminating the journey in Fortaleza. And then Sam unfortunately died in 2004, and his son Fisk Johnson took over the reins of the company, and he decided very early on that he wanted to commemorate the life of his father, Sam, and decided to create a project where he could locate the Sikorsky seaplane in perpetuity. It had become quite a complicated aircraft to keep running, and he felt that that would be a legacy for his father. And so in 2006, he elected to run an international design competition, and we were invited to that, and after the normal tussles of designs and interviews, we were awarded the commission in 2006. And from the outset, and this is Norman and I on the first site visit, trying to establish where we might site a building in the context of Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings. It was certainly going to be challenging and quite daunting, not only dealing with the legacy, the family legacy of the Canuba aircraft, but also the architectural legacy that we found at Racine. And I think quite interestingly, very early on, this is Norman's initial concept sketch for the project. We were very taken by the fact, and I'm sure those of you who have been to the campus will know that Frank Lloyd Wright had designed both the great workroom and all the laboratories, so there was no external aspect. So you can't see out of the buildings, they're completely internalised. You're probably familiar with the glass tubing, which allows light in, but you can't see through it. So I think the client, and certainly it was almost a direct request that as we developed the project for the aircraft, as the building should be highly visible. He wanted the staff to see in and out, very importantly out. And that was very much the kind of the key, should we say, design move as we took the project forward. And you can see there the sketch with the aircraft just floating in a conceptual glass box. The design developed as they do, and we looked at a range of different solutions for the structure, how it could be integrated into the campus, and as part of the project there was an ongoing master plan for how one deals with all of the existing buildings. And very importantly, collaboration. This is our team internally in London. We're very fortunate to work with Epstein from Chicago, our local architect, who were invaluable in taking forward the project with us, together with Bura Happold, the engineering firm from London, and also supported from the US. And I think from our very early ideas for the project, and this is a model from the competition, we were very keen to develop a design that gave the aircraft a kind of a sense of freedom, of flight. And I think very importantly, the idea that we would introduce those very distinctive carnauba trees into the design. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but we felt that was important in terms of the storytelling for the project. Another kind of interesting point about the campus that we found out is that all of the buildings are kind of disparate and set on a fairly large, substantial campus, but they're all linked with a series of subterranean tunnels. And those tunnels are critical in terms of the movement of the staff, 1,500 on site, around the property. So it was quite apparent from an early stage that it would be necessary to have a lower undercroft, and this is looking down. This is the point where we discovered the old Sikorsky plane, and the idea of putting that kind of below a raised floor, which we didn't realise in the end. But I think what's important is that we saw the opportunity to create a really kind of monumental space below the aircraft. And that would present to us some kind of unique opportunities to introduce thematic elements into the project. We were then, I think, very fortunate to be able to work with Ralph Applebaum from New York and his team, with Tim Ventimiglia on the left there, the principal, and Fabio. And we worked with them quite intensely for about 12 months on the project to develop various aspects of the design, and in particular the mural in the base of the project. Ralph Applebaum had introduced us to graphic concrete. It was a process that we hadn't used on our projects before. And they were very quick to realise the potential of that, particularly at this lower area where we had these large monumental concrete panels. And so we began to develop an idea and a concept for introducing a large mural, about 800 square metres, formed of 15 substantial precast panels measuring 5.5 metres by 4 metres, and introducing those into the base of the hall, and then looking at the potential to lower the aircraft so it immerses itself in that context. and that was the design that we find in. It's taken from an original photograph taken from the 1935 journey to Fortaleza. We then had, I think, the very interesting aspect of graphic concrete and developing it as a design solution for the project is to look at how one realizes imagery through the pixelation. And we looked initially at the idea of maybe using the Canuba leaf as a pixel to generate the image, and that was something that we took quite a long way. We also then looked at simpler solutions to develop the imagery. And I think what's very important is that when you're doing this, having looking at the graphic density of what you're producing and how that, and you'll see this in a moment, how that works with the fabrication process, I think is critically important to the success of the project. And then we finally came up with a third solution, which was slightly more relaxed from the previous one, which I think gave some definition, but it was also it had a more filigree quality to it. And I think what I really enjoyed, and I think the team really enjoyed about graphic concrete, is that, and in particular in this project, because we're using it, it's only used internally, is that you can get very, very close to it, and you see there's a real delicacy of it, when you're up close, and then you move away from it, and you begin to understand and perceive the imagery of the photograph. So I think it works on a range of different scales, and I think that was the most enjoyable part, really, as we developed the design, just being able to experience it in these different distances where it took on a different quality. So we then completed the detailed design stage, and you can see here on the far left the photograph with the final design located just on the nib. We did look at introducing graphic concrete elsewhere, but elected not to do so. And at that point, I think we were quietly confident we had kind of got a really kind of compelling solution. But then, of course, there is the reality of making it. And we were, again, I think, very fortunate. I think, all projects are about collaboration, and we were very lucky to find a precast concrete manufacturer in Germantown. It was about 30 miles north of Racine, who were very, very good at precast, very, very good at manufacturing curved panels, and also very patient and were prepared to go through a fairly extensive mock-up process. And I think what was interesting is we developed the solutions, and I think on the video you saw at the beginning, how much aggregate you're putting into the concrete, how the density of the graphic artwork determines the kind of the quality and the tonality of the final product. And there were many kind of hits and misses with this, and it was a process that took about 2.5 months to get right. But again, kind of fascinating to see. And this is one of the misses. This is when you go, when you're too subtle with it, and you lose the imagery altogether. And we felt it was important to go through this process to make sure that we had that right quality to the final image. And that is what we finally selected after a couple of months of developing the graphic technique and the processes, and obviously working directly with the manufacturer in the workshops with the acetates and the molds. And then this is the final mock-up panel, which was produced prior to construction. And you can see the kind of the heroic scale of it, which I think we felt was very enjoyable. It was at kind of this point that everyone was getting very, very concerned about the risk of introducing an element of this size into the project. How do we do it? And then, again, a kind of a key moment when the client was told we need to break this panel into 3 to get it into the building, and everyone was pulling their hair out, thinking all of this work done is going to be, is going to be kind of destroyed by introducing horizontal joints. And again, it's a point of collaboration, and I suppose obvious because precast concrete is normally used as an external application. The contractor said, well, why don't we install it before we build the rest of the building? Which is, I suppose, with the benefit of hindsight, is kind of blindingly obvious. At the time, it wasn't. But they suggested a solution whereby we would do all of the installation of what is a finished piece of, quite fine, intricate work, and that would all be installed prior to the superstructure being constructed. And you can see it there. There was a lot of time and effort spent ensuring that these panels, which weighed over 8 tons, could be brought into site. And you can see the building. And this is the point where the 15th panel has been lifted into place. And we then, after that was completed, and there's some images there of it being installed and lowered into place, they could then build the superstructure. So all of the precast was fully protected, and then we dropped the roof and the steelwork and the glazing in and around it, obviously making sure that the final surface was very well protected. So the building was completed in 2010, and we had the opening party in the base of the space. 400 people were there at the opening. I think really a message I think that I want to put out is that these projects kind of work through collaboration. There's no any one master, I think, in this process. There are a lot of people helping, contributing to the design and to the construction. And to that end, I think companies like Graphic Concrete who assisted us all the way through the process, to the stone contractor and the contractor who built the project, Gil Baines, I think really, really important. I think the final end results, I think I said at the beginning of the talk that we had used this reference from 1935, this etching as the kind of the quality we wanted to introduce into the base of the building. I think with that process and working through with the team, we managed to develop something that was very distinctive, but very much part of that original journey. And you can see that in the final 2 slides, the space at the bottom of the hall, and the final image, which is the idea of the plane in flight with the imagery of the Kanuba rainforests below. I think that's what I have for you.